Hi, seventh graders. Mrs. T here. Today we're going to be talking about a text called Life Without Gravity. It is an expository essay, which means it explains facts and or a process of how to do something. So, background information that you need to know. Gravity is the force that keeps the sun, the earth, and the moon in their proper orbits. So, as they're going through space. So through gravity, the sun and the earth and the moon affect each other. So if the sun's gravity helps keep the earth in orbit around the sun, then the earth's gravity in turn helps keep the moon in orbit around the earth. So even though the moon's gravity is much weaker than Earth's, it affects the rise and fall of the ocean's tides and stuff like that. So this text is about how here on Earth, gravity is the force that holds people and objects down and gives them weight. So beyond the Earth's atmosphere, gravity is weaker. So that causes things and people to weigh less. So when astronauts go into space, the weak gravity environment affects how they're able to drink, how they're able to eat, move, even how they go to the bathroom. Like, it affects everything. So it affects their bones and muscles and the way they feel. So I'm going to read the text to you, and what we're going to do is talk about the claim in the text about the disadvantages and the advantages of weightlessness. So, either is weightlessness a good thing or is it a bad thing? Does it have advantages or does it have more disadvantages? Okay, so this is called Life Without Gravity by Robert Zimmerman. Being weightless in space seems so exciting. Astronauts bounce about from wall to wall flying. They float, they weave, they do somersaults and acrobats without effort. Heavy objects can be lifted like leathers, and no one ever gets tired because nothing weighs anything. In fact, everything is fun and nothing is hard. Not. Since the first manned space missions in the 1960s, scientists have discovered that being weightless in space isn't just flying around like Superman. Zero gravity is alien stuff. As space tourist Dennis Tito said when he visited the International Space Station, living in space is like having a different life, living in a different world. Worse, weightlessness can sometimes be downright unpleasant. Your body gets upset and confused, your face puffs up, your nose gets stuffy, your back hurts, your stomach gets upset, and you throw up. If astronauts are able to survive a one-year journey to Mars, the shortest possible trip to the red planet, they will have to learn how to deal with this weird environment. Our bodies are adapted to Earth's gravity. Our muscles are strong in order to overcome gravity as we walk and run. Our inner ears use gravity to keep us upright. And because gravity wants to pull all our blood down into our legs, our hearts are designed to pump hard to get blood up into our brains. In space, the much weaker gravity makes the human body change in many unexpected ways. In microgravity, which is like near weightlessness that astronauts have, your blood is rerouted, flowing from the legs, which become thin and stick-like, to the head, which swells up. The extra liquid in your head also makes you feel like you're hanging upside down or have a stuffed up nose. The lack of gravity causes astronauts to routinely grow between 1 and 3 inches taller. Their spines straighten out, their bones in their spine and the discs between them spread apart and relax. But the bones also get thin and spongy. The body decides that if the muscles aren't going to push and pull on the bones, then it doesn't need to lay down as much bone as it normally does. Astronauts who have been in space for several months can lose 10% or more of their bone tissue. If their bones get much weaker, they would snap once the astronauts return to Earth. And their muscles get weak and flabby. Floating in space is too easy. If astronauts don't force themselves to exercise, their muscles become so feeble that when they return to Earth, they can't even walk. Worst of all is how their stomachs feel. During the first few days in space, the inner ear, which gives people their sense of balance, gets confused. Many astronauts become nauseous. They lose their appetites. Many throw up. Many throw up a lot. Weightlessness isn't all bad, however. After about a week, people usually get used to it. Their stomachs settle down, appetites return, though the astronauts always say that the food tastes blander in space. The heart and spine adjust. Then, flying around like a bird becomes fun. Rooms suddenly seem much bigger. Look around you. The space above your head is pretty useless on Earth. You can't get up there to work, and anything you attach to the ceiling is simply something you'll bump your head on. In space, however, that area is useful. In fact, equipment can be installed on every inch of every wall. In weightlessness, you choose to move up or down, or left or right, simply by pointing your head. If you turn yourself upside down, the ceiling becomes the floor. And you can't drop anything. As you work, you can let your tools float around you, but you better be organized and neat. If you don't put things back where they belong when you're finished tying them down securely, they will float away. Air currents will then blow them into nooks and crannies, and it might take you days to find them again. In microgravity, you have to learn new ways to eat. Don't try pouring a bowl of cornflakes. Not only will the flakes float all over the place, but the milk won't pour. Instead, big balls of milk will form. You can drink these by taking big bites out of them, but you'd better finish them before they slam into a wall, splattering apart and covering everything with tiny little milk globules. Some meals on the space station are eaten with forks and knives, but scooping food with a spoon doesn't work. If the food isn't gooey enough to stick to the spoon, it will float away. Everyone in space drinks through a straw, since liquid simply refuses to stay in a glass. The straw has to have a clamp at one end, or else when you stop drinking, the liquid will continue to flow out, spilling everywhere. To prevent their muscles and bones from becoming too weak for life on Earth, astronauts have to follow a boring 2-hour exercise routine every single day. Imagine having to run on a treadmill for 1 hour in the morning and then ride an exercise bike another hour before dinner. As Russian astronaut Valery Ryumin once said, "Yick." Even after all this exercise, astronauts who spend more than 2 months in space are usually weak and uncomfortable when they get back to Earth. Jerry Leininger, who spent more than 4 months on the Russian space station Mir, struggled to walk after he returned. "My body felt like a 500-pound barbell," he said. He even had trouble lifting and holding his 15-month-old son, John. When Leininger went to bed that first night, his body felt like it was being smashed into the mattress. He was constantly afraid that if he moved too much, he would float away and out of control. And yet, Leininger recovered quickly. In fact, almost 24 astronauts have lived in space for more than 6 months, and 4 have stayed in orbit for more than a year. These men and women faced the discomforts of weightlessness and overcame them, and they all readapted to Earth's gravity without problems, proving that voyages to Mars are possible, even when it feels like you're hanging upside down the whole time. Okay, so we found out what weightlessness is. There are definite advantages to it. They talked about how it can almost become fun, but there's definitely disadvantages to weightlessness too. So when you're talking about a claim, there is a claim that there are many disadvantages to weightlessness, and there's a claim that there are advantages to weightlessness. So if you were going to argue about weightlessness, you would make your claim that either there are many more disadvantages or there are many more advantages. So now we're going to talk about how to make an argument, how to analyze the claims. Hope you enjoyed reading time.